Okay, Jenna, is it true that if I'm wanting to lose weight, I should only eat when I'm hungry?
You know, that's a really tricky question. Eating when you're hungry, those are those cues that sometimes we forget and we miss when we're used to eating when we're bored, or eating because we're sad, or eating because we're happy. So getting back to those cues of you're hungry, you should eat is a good thing. However, sometimes you're not hungry when you feel hungry. So Dr. Chris and I have been talking about it with our patients about putting yourself on an eating schedule, looking at to a certain time frame of when you eat. So you eat at this certain time every day, and you cut off meals after dinner. If you're hungry after dinner, the goal is for you to, have something to drink and go for a walk and figure out whether you are hungry or if you're just bored. We all get different sensations in our body, and unfortunately we have dismissed those cues in the past, so we don't really understand how to interpret those.
I guess so. So what you've actually explained there to me is that sometimes hungry, that feeling of hunger, isn't lack of food; it's something else.
Absolutely. We get Our bodies are amazing things, and so there are times where we interpret hunger, and there may be something else that we're seeking. You may always eat at a certain time of the day and you miss that meal. Are you going to be hungry or not? How big was your breakfast before and after? It's not just your brain, it's your biology, it's your circumstance. So it's a really difficult question.
Sean, could I add something
Please.
there? Because she's right on the right track. Maybe I'll just put some different words on it. When we feel hunger, it can be a direct result of what we had to eat before. And so if you notice, if she mentioned having a big breakfast. Well, if you have a big breakfast of really high simple carbohydrate breakfast, you're going to be more hungry a little later. I mean, just a few hours later, as opposed to if you had just kind of a really portioned out correctly, well-balanced proteins and complex carbohydrate meal, your hunger is not going to be there quite as quickly. And it has to do with how your blood sugars go up and down. And so you've heard a lot about the intermittent fasting, and Jenna mentioned we're counseling people during this quarantine when they're stuck indoors to put themselves on an eating schedule so that they have a certain amount of time that they aren't eating. And that slowly will train your body to not, even though at the beginning you might feel that hunger, maybe a few days later that hunger might be 2 or 3 hours longer down the road than it was previously. And so there is some training that we can do to help with that. And I think putting yourself on an eating schedule, like Jen had talked about, is really a handy way to do that. And that's where kind of the intermittent fasting craze has come from. And I think it can be helpful when you're talking about controlling your blood sugar in that manner. That can be a helpful way of reducing your calories and making better food choices.
So actually, my interpretation of what you just said is, if I got up in the morning and I had pancakes with syrup, although they're very stodgy and they're full of sugar, and I'm going to enjoy it, and I'm going to be full after eating it, that kind of breakfast is going to make me hungrier sooner than a bowl of oats.
I'll let Jenna take that.
So it's the mix between simple carbohydrates and complex carbohydrates. And so you worry about how your body is metabolizing all of these foods at a certain amount. So yes, if you eat something that your body has to fight and burn and function through, like something very high in starch, very high in sugar, without having to work as hard, I'm losing this. I guess the answer is yes. If you have a very high starch, high sugar diet, your body processes that through quicker. even though you might feel fuller. If you have a more complex carbohydrate, let's say your breakfast was apples, and then also you had protein of eggs, and also you moved on and had maybe even a small piece of toast, your body actually has to work harder to metabolize that. Your blood sugar stays higher because your body isn't running through all the simple things. So we become more satiated in the long term because we have our bodies having to break down complex, and that takes longer.
Okay, thank you.